Good morning, philosophers. Hope you're well today. Let's continue our reading. Got some people coming to the house, so I'm racing to work on things. So we gotta race them. Let's see. Reasons. Oh yeah, we were talking about this guy's Tony and his reasons why his job must last forever. Reasons why my job must last forever is false. Number one, if I lose my job, I lose it. Reality is reality, not the way I think it has got to be. 2. Although I keenly prefer not to lose my job, a preference does not equal a got to. 3. Although I would have extra financial and employment hassles if I lost my job, that's all I would have, hassles, not horrors. 4. It could be nice to have a respite from work, which would provide a longed-for break to visit my brother in Italy. 5. I have savings I could live on for a while. I would be able to take my time and do a really excellent job of finding the best job available. 6. Losing my job could give me just the push that I have been lacking to take a chance on my dream, starting my own business as a computer consultant. 7. Losing my job would give me a golden opportunity to practice accepting misfortunes rather than needlessly worrying about them. 8. I would see concretely that even the worst-case scenario is not as bad as I had anticipated. 9. If I lose my job, this would be a bad situation, but it would not make me a bad or worthless person. 10. I could be more money conscious, for example, move into a smaller apartment, eat at home more, and buy a new car in 5 years rather than immediately. This would mean some deprivation, but I've survived deprivation before, and I will survive it in the future. 11. The simple fact of losing my job by itself can never disturb me. Only my belly aching about it can do that. 12. Even if I never get a job as well-paying as my current one, I could accept that and still considerably enjoy life, although I could enjoy it even more with a better salary. 13. Losing my job would provide an opportunity to eventually get a position that may have certain advantages over this one. A more supportive boss, more friendly coworkers, less pressure, more interesting work, shorter commute times, less crowded workspace, or better pay. 14. Pressuring myself not to get fired will not help me keep my job. Moreover, it could turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more I demand this, the more stressed and distracted I get, and the worse I perform. 15. In the larger sense, all jobs are temporary. Career changes, unemployment, and lost jobs are part of life. You can tell we're not reading the actual Stoics because they would have said, "You're going to die soon." 16. If I start at square one at a new job, I could work my way up the ladder as I've done before. 17. Everyone has significant discomforts, inconveniences, and hassles in life. This is part of the human condition. No reason exists why I have got to be exempt. 18. It could actually be a relief not to be so focused on getting promotions and moving up the corporate ladder. Tony read this list into his phone. He listened to it at home and in his car. He found this daily reinforcement surprisingly effective in eroding his got-tos, and thereby drastically reducing his anxiety. Anxiety, fear, and worry. Fear and anxiety are basically the same emotion. We use these two words in subtly different ways. We are more likely to call the emotion anxiety if the thing feared seems vague or uncertain, but it's the same animal. Worry is the practice of anxiously pondering something, usually repeatedly and at length. So if you feel a twinge of panic when called upon to make a speech, that's anxiety, but not worry. If, on the other hand, you keep anxiously thinking about the speech you are scheduled to make next week, that's both anxiety and worry. Worry is anxious pondering. Worry is a package made up of both pondering and anxiety, or in the form of an equation, worry equals pondering plus anxiety. Popular fallacies about worry mostly arise because people do not distinguish between pure pondering without anxiety and pondering with added anxiety. People may say, "Don't worry about that," when what they really mean is, "Don't concern yourself with that, don't give it another thought." This way of speaking is in itself harmless, of course, but mistakes arise when people believe that thinking hard about a problem has to be an anxious experience. A chess grandmaster may spend hours pondering a position, trying to find the best move, but there is no reason why he need feel anxious about it, and he is more likely to analyze the position better if he is free of anxiety. The same applies to Proust writing a great novel or Beethoven writing one of his symphonies. People will often say that worry is useless, and that it's best to stop worrying, by which they usually mean stop thinking about the problem. However, pondering some problem may not be useless. One may come up with an idea that would solve or alleviate it. If you have an important interview tomorrow, you may worry about it. That is think anxious. Sorry. Whew. You may worry about it. That is, think anxiously about it. And this may do you some good in the interview. Research shows that people do better on such occasions if they rehearse them in their minds beforehand. Yet, the good that comes from such worrying comes despite the anxiety, not because of it. Merely thinking about the interview without feeling anxious about it will do just as much good and probably more. People who think anxiously about such things usually think far less efficiently than those who think non-anxiously. Contrary to the usual view, it's possible to feel keenly concerned about something without feeling in the least anxious about it. Ted and Timothy are great buddies and have a vigorous, friendly rivalry at table tennis, which gives them much enjoyment. They are each keenly determined to win and excited and exhilarated whether they win or lose, though also distinctly disappointed if they lose. There is no anxiety in their concern to win. They don't fear losing, though they decidedly prefer not to lose. This kind of example refutes the popular but mistaken view that some anxiety is helpful because we need adrenaline to give us extra speed or concentration in moments of crisis. Extra adrenaline can be helpful in some situations, but we can have the extra adrenaline without any fear or anxiety, as Ted and Timothy do during table tennis, or as people often do during sex. True warriors often do spend a lot of time thinking uselessly about their problems, their thoughts going round and round in a repeating groove to no effect. But if they would learn to think about their problems without anxiety, they would then spontaneously stop thinking excessively about those problems where further thought was obviously pointless. How can we learn to think about problems without anxiety? The anxiety, the fear, always comes from our demands, our musts. The way you can stop worrying and yet continue to think hard about a problem is to challenge and uproot your musts. When you find yourself worrying about some situation, it's not the situation by itself that is generating your anxiety. It's your musts that make you anxious, and tackling your musts is the best way to reduce your anxiety. Chapter 3, Self-Esteem, the Feel Good About Yourself Trap. Might have some disagreement here. We talked about this on his interview on Anarchast. Quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes: "A man is a kind of inverted thermometer, the bulb uppermost, and the column of self-valuation is all the same, going up and down." At age 25, Jerry was tall and good-looking, with a broad-shouldered athletic build. He was an expert surfer and water skier. His Valentino suit hadn't left him much change out of $6,000. He drove a BMW to work and a Porsche to the beach. Unlike some upwardly mobile achievers, Jerry had a polite and unassuming manner, and with his warm, contagious smile he communicated instant likability. He had recently become engaged to an intelligent and beautiful law student. Jerry felt good about himself. He awoke each morning eager to face the challenges of the day, and took pleasure in the exercise of his own abilities. He successfully managed his own rapidly expanding real estate business and was proud of his accomplishments. He undoubtedly possessed what is often called high self-esteem. No one who knew Jerry suspected that he was an emotional time bomb ticking away. The winner becomes a loser. 6 months later, when Jerry came to see me, he was miserable and preoccupied with suicide. For the past month, he had been waking up at 4 a.m. with a knot in his stomach. He then felt anxious for the rest of the day and was often depressed. In his relations with his fiancée, he was experiencing erection problems and had begun to brood about becoming permanently impotent, a prospect he perceived as horribly shameful. Quote, "I'm terrified that I'm going to lose everything, including my mind. I can't sleep. Nothing is fun anymore. I cry every morning before leaving for work. I'm beside myself and I don't know what to do. I'm at the end of my rope." End quote. The problem separation technique. Whenever someone is suffering emotionally, as Jerry was, I have found that a simple procedure usually clarifies the situation. First, identify the practical problem. Second, identify the emotional problem. Third, get the sufferer to look at the connection between his emotional problem and his practical problem. I explained to Jerry the difference between a practical and an emotional problem. Quote, "It seems to me," I said, "that your practical problem involves the success of your business. How can you start making money in real estate again? Or would you do better to change your line of work? The emotional problem is that you're upsetting yourself about your current setbacks. Why not do your best with the real estate without ripping yourself up inside about it?" "I wish I could," he said, "but I'd feel I wasn't good enough, like a failure, if my business went down the drain. Todd just made a $2 million sale. He picked up an unbelievable commission with that one. I'm just nowhere in comparison." End quote. I nearly always find that a person comes to me convinced that his practical problem automatically generates his emotional problem. My first job is to undermine this conviction, showing him that he causes his emotional problem by the way he thinks. His practical problem is defined by his preferences, but his emotional problem springs from his musts. Then the practical and emotional problems can be tackled separately. This may not sound like great progress, but it really is. Once the person begins to seriously tackle the emotional problem separately from the practical problem, there is often a prompt improvement in the practical problem. The self-rating roller coaster. Without realizing it, Jerry had become caught in the feel-good-about-yourself trap. When he was making lots of sales, he rated himself as a pretty fine person, and this gave him high self-esteem. His mistake was not that he liked being successful. His mistake was that he rated himself highly as a total person because of his success. As a result, when he became less successful, he automatically gave himself a lower rating and began to feel miserable. As I probed, Jerry admitted more and more clearly that he believed himself to be totally unworthy. Like many people in this frame of mind, Jerry believed that his own strong feeling that he was unworthy was somehow evidence that he was unworthy. This kind of reasoning reinforces itself in an endless cycle. The more worthless he felt, the more evidence he had to prove he was indeed worthless. I asked Jerry, quote, "Assuming that your performance in real estate is inferior right now, how does this make you totally inferior? After all, you are an imperfect human like everyone else. So it's to be expected that you will sometimes act imperfectly. How does this prove that you're worthless?" He said, quote, "I don't know. I can't prove it. All I know is that I feel worthless, so I must be worthless." Now, of course, it's easy for an outsider, someone not involved in Jerry's life, to see that Jerry is being unreasonable. It's obvious that there's something irrational in this dogmatic insistence that he's an inferior worm. But it's just as irrational for someone to maintain that they're a great person because things are going well for them. Psychotherapists who preach high self-esteem overlook this logical connection. They encounter miserable people and observe that these people frequently have a very low opinion of themselves. These Dr. Feel-Good therapists then conclude that the appropriate treatment is to encourage their clients to give themselves a higher self-rating. But self-rating, any self-rating, high or low, is often the root of the problem. All right, that's a good stopping point. The next little section is long. Hope you guys are enjoying this. I like learning new things and techniques and challenging myself even with the ones I disagree with. and it looks like the people just pulled up. So I'm going to have to cut this video short today, unfortunately. What would be a quick thought for today? No, I'm not going to do that. Y'all have a great day.